Welcome to Snoozecast, the podcast designed to help you fall asleep. Find us on snoozecast.com and follow us on Instagram at Snoozecast, where you'll find behind-the-scenes content. If you enjoy our show, please write a review on the podcast's app. Also, share us with a friend. This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, including our newest patron, Gayla. Thank you, Gayla. And by A Fair Morning. Tonight, we'll read from the journals of Lewis and Clark. The Lewis and Clark expedition, from 1803 to 1806, was the United States expedition to cross the newly acquired western portion of the country. The core of discovery was a select group of Army and civilian volunteers, under the command of Captain Meriwether Lewis and his close friend, Lieutenant William Clark. President Thomas Jefferson commissioned the expedition shortly after the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 to explore and to map the newly acquired territory, to find a practical route across the western half of the continent. The campaign's secondary objectives were scientific and economic: to study the area's plants, animal life, geography, and to establish trading. The expedition returned to Jefferson with maps, sketches, and journals in hand. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. Clark, May 14, 1804. Monday. Rained the forepart of the day. I determined to go as far as St. Charles, a French village 7 leagues up the Missouri, and wait at that place until Captain Lewis could finish the business in which he was obliged to attend to at St. Louis and join me by land from that place 24 miles. By this movement I calculated that if any alterations in the loading of the vessels, or other changes necessary, that they might be made at St. Charles. I set out at 4:00 p.m. in the presence of many of the neighboring inhabitants, and proceeded on under a gentle breeze up the Missouri to the upper point of the first island, 4 miles. Camped on the island, which is situated close on the right, or starboard, side, and opposite the mouth of a small creek called Cold Water. A heavy rain this afternoon. The course of this day nearly west wind from northeast. Lewis, May 15th, 1804. Tuesday. It rained during the greater part of last night and continued until 7:00 a.m., after which the party proceeded, passed 2 islands, and encamped on the starboard shore at Mr. Pfeiffer's landing opposite an island. The evening was fair. Some wild geese with their young broods were seen today. The barge run foul several times on logs, and in one instance it was with much difficulty they could get her off. Happily no injury was sustained, though the barge was several minutes in imminent danger. This was caused by her being too heavily laden in the stern. Persons accustomed to the navigation of the Missouri and the Mississippi, also below the mouth of this river, uniformly take the precaution to load their vessels heaviest in the bow, when they ascend the stream in order to avoid the dangerous incident of running afoul of the concealed timber which lies in great quantities in the beds of these rivers. Clark, May 15, 1804. Tuesday. Rained all last night, and this morning until 7 o'clock. all our fire extinguished. Some provisions on the top got wet. I sent 2 men to the countryside to hunt, and proceed on at 9 o'clock. Proceeded on 9 miles, and camped at a Mr. Pip landing, just below a coal bank. I sent to the settlements in the prairie and purchased fowls. Passed a small island near the center of the river, running into several logs this afternoon. Camped at Mr. Piper's landing. Clark, May 16, 1804. Wednesday, a fair morning. Set out at 5 o'clock past the coal hill. This hill appears to contain great quantities of coal, and also ore of a rich appearance having greatly the resemblance of silver. Arrived opposite St. Charles at 12 o'clock. This village is at the foot of a hill. A number of spectators who flocked to the bank to see the party. It contains about 100 different houses, and about 450 inhabitants, principally French. Those people appear poor, polite, harmonious, and extremely kind. The country around, I am told, is beautiful. Interspersed with prairies and timber alternately, and has a number of American settlers. I was invited to dine with a Mr. Doucet. This gentleman was once a merchant from Canada. From misfortunes to the loss of a cargo sold to the late Judge Turner, he has become somewhat reduced. He has a charming wife, an elegant situation on the hill, surrounded by orchards and an excellent garden. A fine day. Clark, May 17, 1804. Thursday. A fair day, but compelled to punish for misconduct. A keelboat came up today. Several of the inhabitants came aboard today. We received several species of vegetables from the inhabitants today. A sergeant and 4 men of the party, destined for the Missouri expedition, will convene at 11 o'clock today on the quarter deck of the boat, and form themselves into a court-martial to hear and determine the evidences against William Warner and Hugh Hall for being absent last night without leave, contrary to orders, and John Collins for being absent without leave. Second, for behaving in an unbecoming manner at the ball last night. Thirdly, for speaking in a language last night, after his return, tending to bring into disrespect the orders of the commanding officer. Clark, May 18, 1804. Friday, a fine morning. I had the boat reloaded so as to cause them to be heavier in the bow than astern. Received from Mr. Lyon 136 pounds tobacco. Mr. Chodo gave out tin cups and 3 knives to the French hands. Mr. Lorisme returned from the Kickapoo town today. Set out for St. Louis, Mr. Doucet made me a present of river cats and some herbs. Our French hands bring me eggs, milk, etc., and 2 keelboats arrived from Kentucky today loaded with whiskey, hats, and etc. The wind blows hard from the southwest. Clark, May 19, 1804. Saturday. Wind last night from the southwest, followed by rain, which lasted some hours. A cloudy morning. I heard of my brother's illness today, which has given me much concern. I was invited to a ball in the village. It is not in my power to go. I let several of the men go. Our fields killed a deer. 7 ladies visited me today. Lewis, May 20, 1804. Sunday. The morning was fair and the weather pleasant at 10 o'clock a.m. I was joined by Captain Stoddard and many other respectable inhabitants of St. Louis, who had engaged to accompany me to the village of St. Charles. Accordingly, at 12, after bidding an affectionate adieu to my hostess, that excellent woman the spouse of Mr. Peter Choto, and some of my fair friends of St. Louis, we set forward to that village in order to join my friend, companion, and fellow laborer, Captain William Clark, who had previously arrived in that place, with the party destined for the discovery of the interior of the continent of North America. The first 5 miles of our route lay through a beautiful, high level and fertile prairie, which encircles the town of St. Louis from northwest to southeast. The lands through which we then passed are somewhat broken up. Fertile plains and woodlands are here indiscriminately interspersed until you arrive within 3 miles of the village, when the woodland commences and continues to the Missouri. The latter is extremely fertile. At half after 1 p.m., our progress was interrupted by the approach of a thunderstorm from the northwest, and we concluded to take shelter in a little cabin until the rain should be over. Accordingly, we alighted and remained about an hour and a half. The clouds continued to follow each other in rapid succession, insomuch that there was but little prospect of it ceasing to rain this evening. As I had determined to reach St. Charles this evening, and knowing that there was now no time to be lost, I set forward in the rain. Most of the gentlemen continued with me. We arrived at half after 6 and joined Captain Clark. Found the party in good health and spirits. We supped this evening with a Spanish ensign named Teong. At an early hour, I retired to rest on board the barge. St. Charles is situated on the north bank of the Missouri, 21 miles above its junction with the Mississippi, and about the same distance northwest from St. Louis. It is bisected by one principal street about 1 mile in length, running nearly parallel with the river. The plain on which it stands is narrow, though sufficiently elevated to secure it against the annual inundations of the river, which usually happen in the month of June. And in the rear it is terminated by a range of small hills. The village contains a chapel, 100 dwelling houses, and about 450 inhabitants. Their houses are generally small and ill-constructed. A great majority of the inhabitants are miserably poor, illiterate, and when at home excessively lazy, though they are polite, hospitable, and by no means deficient in point of natural genius. They live in a perfect state of harmony among each other. They place implicit confidence in the doctrines of their spiritual pastor, the Roman Catholic priest, as they yield passive obedience to the will of their temporal master, the commandment. A small garden of vegetables is the usual extent of their cultivation, and this is commonly imposed on the old men and boys. The men in the vigor of life consider the cultivation of the earth a degrading occupation, and in order to gain the necessary subsistence for themselves and families, either undertake hunting voyages on their own account, or engage themselves as hirelings to such persons as possess sufficient capital to extend their traffic to the natives of the interior parts of the country. On those voyages, in either case, they are frequently absent from their families or homes the term of 6, 12, or 18 months, and always subjected to severe and incessant labor, exposed to weather and climate, and dependent on chance or accident alone for food or relief in the event of a malady. These people are principally the descendants of the Canadian French. On consulting with my friend, Captain Clark, I found it necessary that we should postpone our departure until 2 p.m. the next day, and accordingly gave orders to the party to hold themselves in readiness to depart at that hour. Captain Clark now informed me that having gotten all the stores on board the barge on the evening of the 13th of May, He determined to leave at the mouth of River Du Bois the next day and to ascend the Missouri as far as the village of St. Charles. He asked to wait my arrival. This movement, while it advanced us a small distance on our route, would also enable him to determine whether the vessels had been judiciously loaded, and if not, timely to make the necessary altercations. Accordingly, at 4 p.m., he embarked with the party in the presence of a number of the neighboring citizens who had assembled to witness his departure. During the forepart of this day it rained excessively hard. The course and distance of this day was west, 4 miles, the wind from northeast. Clark, May 20, 1804. Sunday. A cloudy morning, rained, and there was a hard wind last night. I gave the party leave to go and hear a sermon today delivered by a Roman Catholic priest. At 3 o'clock, Captain Lewis, accompanied by the officers and several gentlemen of St. Louis, arrived in a heavy shower of rain. It rained the greater part of this evening. Clark, May 21, 1804. Monday. All the forepart of the day was spent arranging our party and procuring the different articles necessary for them at this place. Set out at 3 o'clock under 3 cheers from the gentlemen on the bank and proceeded on to the head of the island 3 miles. Soon after we set out today, a hard wind accompanied with a hard rain came upon us, which lasted with short intervals all night. Clark, May 22, 1804. Tuesday. A cloudy morning. We were delayed by 1 hour for 4 Frenchmen who got liberty to return to arrange some business they had forgotten in town. At 6 o'clock we proceeded on, past several small farms on the bank and a large creek. A camp of Kickapoos told me several days ago that they would come on and hunt, and by the time I got to their camp, they would have some provisions for us. We camped in a bend at the mouth of a small creek. Soon after we came to the Kickapoos, they arrived with 4 deer as a present, for which we gave them 2 quarts of whiskey. This day we passed several islands and some high lands on the starboard side, and very hard water. Clark, May 23, 1804. Wednesday. We set out early and ran into a log. This detained us 1 hour, but we proceeded the course of last night, 2 miles to the mouth of a creek, opposite a large island and a settlement. On this creek, 30 or 40 families are settled, crossed to the settlement, and took in R. and Joe Fields, who had been sent to purchase corn and butter. Many people came to see us. We also passed a large cave about 120 feet wide, 40 feet deep, and 20 feet high. Many different images are painted on the rock at this place. Stopped about 1 mile beyond for Captain Lewis, who had ascended the cliffs, which is at the said cave 300 feet high, hanging over the water. The water was excessively swift today. We encamped below on a small island in the middle of the river. Sent out 2 hunters. 1 killed the deer. Captain Lewis nearly fell from the pinnacle of the rocks 300 feet. He caught himself at 20 foot. Clark, May 24, 1804. Thursday. Set out early, examined the men's arms and ammunition, and saw that all was prepared for action. We passed a small island in the middle of the river. the projecting rock of 1/2 mile in extent against which the current runs. This place is called the Devil's Race Grounds. Above this is a small creek called the Little Quiver. We passed several islands and 2 creeks. We were very near losing our boat. She struck the sands. The violence of the current was so great that the tow rope broke. The boat turned broadside. As the current washed the sand from under her, she wheeled and lodged on the bank below as often as 3 times before we got her in deep water. By the means of swimmers, the boat was carried to shore. We took off and returned to the head of the aforesaid island, this place being the worst I ever saw. I call it the Retrograde Bend, as we were obliged to fall back 2 miles, camped in an old house. Clark, May 25, 1804. Friday. Rain last night. Set out early. Camped at the mouth of a creek above a small French village of 7 houses and as many families. Settled at this place to be convenient to hunt and trade. Here we met with Mr. Lewis. He gave us a good deal of information. Some hard rain this evening. The people at this village are poor, their house is small, but they sent us milk and eggs to eat. Clark, May 26, 1804. Saturday. Set out at 7 o'clock after a heavy shower of rain. Passed several islands today with a great deal of deer. We sent out 1 man hunting. The posts and duties of the sergeants shall be as follows. 1 sergeant shall be stationed at the helm, 1 in the center on the rear of the starboard logger, and 1 at the bow. The sergeant at the helm shall steer the boat and see that the baggage on the quarterdeck is properly arranged and stowed away in the most advantageous manner, to see that no cooking utensils or loose lumber of any kind is left on the deck to obstruct the passage between the berths. He will also attend to the compass when necessary. The sergeant at the center will command the guard, manage the sails, see that the men at the oars do their duty, that they come on board at a proper time in the morning, and that the boat gets under way in due time. He will keep a good lookout for the mouths of all rivers, creeks, islands, and other remarkable places, and shall immediately report the same to the commanding officers. He will attend to the issues of spirituous liquors. He shall regulate the stopping of labor through the day to give the men refreshment, and will also regulate the time of her departure, taking care that not more time than is necessary shall be expended at each halt. It shall be his duty also to post a sentinel on the bank, near the boat, whenever we come to and halt in the course of the day. At the same time he will, accompanied by 2 guards, explore the forest around the place of landing, to the distance of at least 100 paces. When we come too far, the purpose of encamping at night, the sergeant of the guard shall post 2 sentinels immediately on our landing, 1 of whom shall be posted near the boat, and the other at a convenient distance in rear of the encampment. At night the sergeant must be always present with his guard, and he is positively forbidden to suffer any man of his guard to absent himself on any pretext whatever. He will, at each relief through the night, accompanied by the 2 men last off their posts, observe in every direction around the camp, to the distance of at least 150 paces, and also examine the situation of the boat, and see that they lie safe and free from the bank. It shall be the duty of the sergeant at the bow to keep a good lookout for all danger which may approach, either of the enemy or obstructions which may present themselves to passage of the boat, Of the first, he will notify the sergeant at the center, who will communicate the information to the commanding officers. And of the second, or obstructions to the boat, he will notify the sergeant at the helm. He will also report to the commanding officers, through the sergeant at the center, all boats, canoes, or other craft which he may discover in the river. He will at all times be provided with a setting pole and assist the bowsman in poling and managing the bow of the boat. It will be his duty also to give and answer all signals, which may hereafter be established for the government of the parties on shore. The sergeants will, on each morning before our departure, relieve each other in the following manner. The sergeant at the helm will parade the new guard, relieve the sergeant and the old guard, and occupy the middle station in the boat. The sergeant of the old guard will occupy the station at the bow, and the sergeant who had been stationed the preceding day at the bow will place himself at the helm. The sergeants, in addition to those duties, are directed each to keep a separate journal from day to day of all passing occurrences and such other observations on the country as shall appear to them worthy of notice. The sergeants are relieved and exempt from all labor of making fires, pitching tents, or cooking, and will direct and make the men of their several messes perform an equal proportion of those duties. Sergeant John Ordway will continue to issue the provisions. The day after tomorrow, lied corn and grease will be issued to the party. The next day, pork and flour, and the day following, cornmeal and pork. And in conformity to that, ration provisions will continue to be issued to the party until further orders. Should any of the messes prefer cornmeal to flour, they may receive it accordingly. No pork is to be issued when we have fresh meat on hand. Clark, May 27, 1804. Sunday. As we were pushing off and setting out this morning, 2 canoes loaded with beaver, elk, deerskins, and buffalo robes from the Mahars Nation. They informed us that they left that place 2 months ago. At about 10 o'clock, 4 rafts loaded with furs and pelts came, 2, one from the Pawnees, the other from Grand Osage. They informed nothing of consequence. There was a gentle breeze from the southeast. We camped on an island in the mouth of the Gasconade River. This river is 157 yards wide, a beautiful stream of clear water, 19 foot deep. Hills on the lower side. Clark, May 28, 1804. Monday. Rained hard all last night. Some thunder and lightning. Hard wind in the forepart of the night from the southwest. Reuben Fields killed the deer. Several hunter out today. Many things got wet by their carelessness. We put all the articles which were wet out to dry. This day was so cloudy that no observations could be taken. The river began to rise. We examined the men's arms and equipment, all in order.